evening and welcome. You're watching Primetime News on TV1, bringing you the news. I'm Tharushi Kumar Singha. Just before we start off, let's take a look at your headlines this evening.
Experts confirm UK COVID-19 variant is spreading in Sri Lanka.
උදෑසන තීරණය කරා ඒ පැතිරෙන්නේ එංගලන්තයේ මේ විට කරදරයට පත් වෙලා තියෙන B117 කියන ප්‍රභේදය කියන එක අපි 100% වශයෙන් තහවුරු කරා.
Chinese Minister of Defence meets President and Prime Minister. Prime Minister says he expects constant support from China. Podujana Peramuna members to receive training from the Chinese Communist Party. A revelation by Minister G.L. Pires. Centre for Environmental Justice petitions court to stop illegal activities in the Singharaja Forest Reserve.
On to your top story this evening. With the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases across the island, a number of areas were placed under isolation today as well. According to the commander of Sri Lanka Army, General Shavendra Silva, the following areas were placed under isolation from 6 this morning. Wallavaya Town, Weherayaya Grama Niladhari Division in Wallavaya, Kettangahabokka Grama Niladhari Division in Wallavaya, Rattalagama Grama Niladhari Division in Buttala, Kumarigama Grama Niladhari Division in Ampara, and the Alugolla Grama Niladhari Division in Naula, Matale. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Highways announced that the toll booth at the Kottav interchange of the Southern Expressway will be closed and the gates at the interchange will remain open for vehicles to enter the expressway. This was after 3 employees at the toll booth tested positive for COVID-19. However, only ambulances and buses will be allowed to leave the expressway from the Kottav interchange. Therefore, motorists are requested to use the Aturugiriya and Kahaturu interchanges to exit the expressway. Meanwhile, a number of police operations were launched at certain public areas in Chill Out Town to ensure that the general public are adhering to COVID-19 health regulations. Commuters on board long-distance buses were strictly advised to wear face masks while travelling on board the bus. A public awareness program was also held at the Katugastora town. This was the manner in which vehicles travelling from Kandy to Nuwara were searched in Peradeniya.
1,111 COVID-19 cases were reported in the island during the 24 hours that ended at 6 a.m. today. This is the highest number of daily cases recorded in the country. With 8 new COVID-19 related deaths being reported in the country, the total death toll rose to 655. A total of 103,487 COVID-19 cases have been reported in Sri Lanka. Is there a change in the virus spreading in the island?
We have conducted tests on 43 samples obtained from Colombo, Kurunegala and Boralaskamuwa. These tests confirm that the B1.1.7 strand found in the United Kingdom is a strand of virus currently spreading in Sri Lanka. Initially, many of the cases associated with this strain were reported from quarantine centres, but now almost all the patients identified in the country are infected with this strain of the virus. This strain of the virus is problematic. Scientific analysis of the strain suggests that the transmissibility of this strain increases to 55%. The AstraZeneca vaccine used in Sri Lanka is still effective against this strain of the virus. Therefore, it is very important that we control the spread of this strain of the virus until the vaccination program is complete. The first few strains of the virus that spread in Sri Lanka did not cause severe symptoms, but this strain does result in severe symptoms and has adversely affected many countries. In the United Kingdom, this virus began to spread rapidly in January and the number of deaths in the country increased drastically. Also, we speak about the strain that is currently spreading in India, but a majority of the cases reported in India are linked to this strain from the United Kingdom.
Was the strain from United Kingdom identified in time And were the relevant authorities notified?
ඒ මුලින්ම වාර්තා වුණේ කිසි ප්‍රමාණයක් බොරලැස්කමුණක
The first cases of the COVID-19 strain from the UK were identified among 8 employees at a construction site in Boralaskamoa. We informed the relative authorities of this on the 8th of April. We collected their samples in the morning on the 8th of April, and by that evening we had notified the relevant authorities about it. When we detect any such cases, we inform the epidemiology unit and the MOH in charge of the area that some people in the area have tested positive for this new strain of COVID-19. We took all the necessary steps within the matter in a few hours.
පැය කීපයක් ඇතුළත අවශ්‍ය කරන සියලුම කටයුතු සිදු කරා.
The first cases of this new COVID-19 strain from the United Kingdom were identified in the country on the 8th of April, and the relevant authorities were notified of the findings on the same day. However, the very first case associated with this strain of virus was identified on the 13th of January this year, when England cricketer Moeen Ali, who toured Sri Lanka, tested positive for COVID-19. Are the symptoms of the COVID-19 strain from the United Kingdom different?
We do not see a special change in the symptoms. There are 3 main symptoms. One is fever and the other is a dry cough. After a patient displays these symptoms for a few days, then they will experience difficulty in breathing. There are some other symptoms as well. We saw that this strain of the virus also causes symptoms such as body aches, headaches, and also loss of smell.
Is the virus airborne?
මේ අවසන් තීරණය ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානයේ තරහ තමයි.
We generally get the final confirmation from the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization takes a long time, about 3 months, to confirm some details. They even took some time to recognize the spread of the COVID-19 virus as a pandemic. They need to collect all the data before they confirm something. But as scientists, we don't need to just wait until labels are attached. We should take the necessary health measures to manage the situation. It is not important if it is a droplet transmission or airborne transmission. There are enough of scientific evidence published to show that this virus can be airborne as well.
තහවුරු කළ මේක ඇත්තටම scientific error එකක් කියලා විදිහට තමයි ඒගොල්ලන් යෝජනා කරන්නේ.
What is the situation on the supply of oxygen?
According to our calculations and the opinion of specialists, the chances of us facing a shortage in oxygen is very low. We have held discussions on how we should act even if we are to face such a shortage.
Did a patient die of COVID-19 due to lack of ICU beds?
There were 39 ICU beds specifically dedicated for COVID-19 patients. We reached full capacity on those ICU beds, and a patient in Marvanella died due to the lack of an ICU bed. Thereafter, the specialist team decided to increase the capacity of ICU beds by 46 during the coming days.
We as the Ministry of Health decided immediately to assign ICU beds in hospitals that were not used before to treat COVID-19 patients. Thereby, we expect to dedicate about 50 more ICU beds today, specifically for COVID-19 patients.
As of now, we have no intention of going for a lockdown, entire country to go for a lockdown. There is no such situation, and we are not expecting to do such a thing as of now. But however, we have isolated certain Grama Niladhari or some GS divisions or maybe even police areas without giving much notice. During the phase 1 or the period before April, we usually give advance notice for people to get ready before isolation. But this time the variant is such the fast spreading COVID virus in Sri Lanka right at the moment. Therefore, we might not give any advance notice, but immediately will isolate if we find that fair amount of positive cases are in such particular area. So that is the reason that we said that the people should be prepared for such eventuality at any given time. And we have never told that country will be locked down and they are to keep the essential items ready at home. That such a thing has not been told. This is only what we mentioned was that people might not get a opportunity advance notice before isolation being announced.
මම තමයි හොඳටම කරේ කියලා ඔප්පු කරන්න කොවිඩ් නෑ කියලා පෙන්වන්න.
They had to show that COVID was not there to prove that he did it best. Random PCR testing was halted. Random PCR tests were stopped in February and March. Then there came a huge wave after celebrating Aurudu. This is exactly similar to that religious festival in India. It was inside that Kumbh Mela religious festival in India that such a catastrophe took place. The event took place under the patronage of Prime Minister Modi. So a big wave was created due to the Sinhalese and Tamil New Year celebrations because the diseases are allowed to spread. COVID-19 increased by 25% in the first week. During the first week of April, when there was a 25% increase, on the 8th and 9th, the expert committee of the Ministry of Health informed the President that the number of patients were increasing rapidly and also suggested that it is mandatory to impose regulations pertaining to New Year shopping sprees and New Year celebrations. During this time, the President had said, we must allow the people to celebrate the New Year, and if action needs to be taken, it can be looked into after the Sinhala and Tamil New Year. There were no regulations imposed pertaining to the minimum number of people allowed inside a shop or the minimum distance that should be maintained between each individual while shopping. Without imposing such regulations, we just left room for the disease to spread. Quite frankly, we invited COVID into our houses. Now the question is, who in the world has discovered that there can be such a gap between these two doses of the vaccine? The MPs and the ministers in Sri Lanka are the ones saying this. Who is the scientist in Sri Lanka who found out that giving the second dose 12 weeks after the first will give out the highest results? Lalit Veeratunga. There were no such investigations carried out anywhere. The Chinese Sinopharm vaccine, which is not approved by the World Health Organization and not even approved by the NMRA, was imported to Sri Lanka. They said only the Chinese would get the vaccine. This completely violates the code of ethics. After the NMRA objected, 6 members of the authority were removed to bring this down with the intervention of Channa Jayasumana. The chairman was removed and the son of a minister of the Southern Provincial Council was made the chairman of the NMRA. So what he did then was not to get involved in controlling the spread but worked according to his own political agenda instead. The wealthy Indians are leaving the country in their private jets. But where are they leaving to? They are coming to Sri Lanka. They are coming to Sri Lanka and staying in a hotel near Jayala for $690. Even leaflets are being distributed in India advertising this. This is being circulated on social media too. Minister Kehli Ramukwala said that the story of Indian tourists coming to Sri Lanka is untrue. If that is the case, then what have the newspapers reported today? There is no suspension of flights between Sri Lanka and India. The Indian government has requested tourists from India to be allowed. In line with the request, passenger flights from Chennai and New Delhi will arrive in Sri Lanka. A spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs has told the newspapers that private jets and tourists will be allowed to travel through the Palali airport in Jaffna. The government is responsible for these. From now on, shouldn't these deaths be considered murders?
ආණ්ඩුව අසමත් වුණා කොරෝනා පිළිබඳව තියෙන වැක්සින් එක ජනතාවට.
The government failed to give the vaccine to the people in correct doses. Only 900,000 people have been given the vaccine. The second dose of the vaccine was supposed to be given to the public on the 2nd of April, but the second dose has arrived to the country only now. That too is not being properly implemented. The entire world has accepted that this vaccine is the only way to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Therefore, the government must take swift action to vaccinate the public. But sadly, it is not being done at present.
රජයේ විසින් වහාම අවශ්‍ය පියවර ගත යුතුයි තියෙනවා. නමුත් එය නිසි පිළිවෙලට සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
We want to ask as to what vaccine will be given to the people as the second dose. Either they have to bring down the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine from the US or they have to bring down the AstraZeneca vaccine through India. None of these vaccines were given to the people. India is at a critical stage at the moment.
We have received 350,000 vials to be given as the second dose. We have given the first dose to 925,000 people, but we need 600,000 more vials. India informed us that they would provide the necessary number of vials. We believe that we will be able to vaccinate the general public with no issues in the future. We have held diplomatic talks with India and they have confirmed that they will provide the second dose to us even amidst the tough situation they are in.
අපි ඇත්තටම ජනගහනයෙන් 4.2
We have vaccinated 4.2% of the population. The problem at hand is to purchase the vaccine. Even if we have money to purchase it, it is not in the market to buy. One time the Honorable President said to purchase the vaccine even from the black market because the people of this country is our responsibility. Tests are being carried out in other parts of the world to determine whether a cocktail of vaccines can be used. But at present, we are of the stance. If the first dose was AstraZeneca, the second dose also has to be AstraZeneca. Tests are carried out across the world to determine whether you still contract the new variant if you take the first dose from one vaccine and the second from another.
ප්‍රතිදේහය හැදෙනවද කියලා. ඒකත් ලෝකයේ දැන් පර්යේෂණ වෙනවා.
එක මාත්‍රාවකින් පවා
A considerable number of antibodies were formed from one dose. But it is important to understand that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is a one that comes in 2 doses. It is necessary to receive both doses to achieve the expected immunity levels. The new variant that is prevalent in Sri Lanka can be well controlled by the AstraZeneca vaccine.
පාලනය කරගන්න පුළුවන්.
ඇත්තටම ඇමරිකාවේ
The United States has decided to distribute a large number of AstraZeneca vaccine vials because they have a lot left. There are several more types of vaccines being manufactured in the US. We have taken steps to contact the relevant health units in the United States through the US Embassy.
සම්බන්ධ කරගන්න කටයුතු යොදලා තියෙනවා.
The vaccination procedure of the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine began today. The second dose was given to frontline health workers in Kurunegala and Maligavatta, Colombo.
A ferocious second wave in India has seen the official death toll surpass 200,000 and experts believe the actual number may be higher. Yesterday's daily death toll in India was 3,306. As of April 26th, India surpassed Brazil's average number of new deaths to become the country with the most daily fatalities. People have died waiting for beds as oxygen supplies run low and hospitals crumble under the strain. India has seen more COVID-19 cases in the last 7 days than any other country. India currently has the 4th highest death toll in the world, behind the US, Brazil and Mexico. Yet in none of those countries is the crisis as urgent as it is presently in India. Across the capital city of Delhi, crematoriums have been forced to build makeshift funeral pyres as the city runs out of space to cremate its dead. According to the World Health Organization, a COVID-19 variant first found in India has now been detected in at least 17 countries. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has seen a barrage of criticism in recent days. It's a grim situation across all of India, but the western state of Maharashtra and its capital Mumbai have been hit especially hard. The state has been the epicenter of India's second virus wave, accounting for more than a quarter of India's cases. Although countries across the world have come to aid of India, the situation in the country is still grim. The Indian government announced that they expect to receive oxygen and other medical supplies from 15 countries during the next few days. Specialists point out that given the current trends in the spread of virus, the daily COVID-19 infections tally in India will pass 400,000 cases a day by the 4th of May.
Main sponsor.
Cargill's Online, delivering groceries on time, always.
The Chinese Defense Minister Wei Fenghe, who arrived in the island last night for an official 2-day visit, met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa this morning. Chinese Defense Minister General Wei Fenghe arrived in Sri Lanka last night after ending his 1-day visit to Bangladesh. Chinese Defense Minister was welcomed at the Bandaranaike International Airport in Katunayaka by several dignitaries, including Defense Secretary General Kamal Gunaratne.
So we will see you tomorrow, sir.
General Wei Fenghe met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Presidential Secretariat this morning. According to President's media division, Chinese Defense Minister has said that the bilateral talks between himself and the President were successful. He has further stated that the ties between the two countries were strengthened as a result of the visit. Chinese Ambassador to Sri Lanka Zi Zhenhong, Deputy Chief of Staff of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Chinese People's Army and Director General of International Affairs Lieutenant General Zhao Yangmin were also present at the discussion. After the meeting with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the Chinese Defence Minister met with Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Prime Minister, we know you are well respected in Sri Lanka and you have won the wholehearted support of Sri Lanka people. My visit is a very important one. It was approved by President Xi Jinping himself, and it bears great significance to our two countries against the backdrop of the pandemic. The purpose of my visit is to implement the important consensus reached between our two heads of state to strengthen strategic mutual trust, to deepen cooperation and consolidate friendship. Our two militaries have carried out fruitful cooperation in different fields. In this morning, I had a very candid and friendly discussion with His Excellency Mr. President and the Defense Secretary. And we have informed that the Chinese side would provide another 50 million RMB military assistance grantees to the Sri Lanka side.
At the outset, allow me to convey my warm wishes on the 100th year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party this year and for all its achievements. It is indeed an important milestone. Furthermore, let me also congratulate you on your achievements in poverty alleviation. China has uplifted nearly 100 million rural residents out of absolute poverty these 10 years in advance of the completion of the UN Sustainable Development Goal in poverty alleviation. This is an impressive achievement. Honorable Minister, I think we can agree that it has now become very clear to the entire world that vaccines will be the only way to overcome this pandemic. On that front, on behalf of all Sri Lankans, I extend my sincere appreciation for the generous donation of 600,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccines and personal protective equipment since the outbreak of the pandemic. We look forward to China's continued support in dealing with this crisis. Our government has decided not to pursue countrywide lockdowns due to the impact such lockdowns have on our economy and society. I am sure you agree that there is still a lot that needs to be done for the post-pandemic economic recovery. One of our main priorities in this effort is to attract investment from around the world. I look forward to your support in rebuilding investor confidence in Sri Lanka. Honorable Minister, I thank you once again for your visit and look forward to working closely with you and your government to overcome the challenges posed by the pandemic and further enhance our cooperation.
He is not only the Minister of Defense of China but also a member of the Diplomatic Council. He is a person close to the political leadership of that country. He is visiting our country at a very decisive juncture. We are extremely grateful to China for the strong stance they took regarding Sri Lanka at the UN Human Rights Council in March. We have received continuous and strong support from the Chinese government. The Chinese Communist Party will be celebrating their 100th-year anniversary within 2 months. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Party has very close ties with the Chinese Communist Party. We have launched a very productive program for our party members to receive training there. Basil Rajapaksa and the secretary of our party, Sagara Karyawasam, joined them online and attended a few of these workshops.
අන්තර්ජාලය ඔස්සේ සම්බන්ධ වෙලා තිබෙනවා වැඩමුළු කීපයකට.
In reality, the Defense Minister of China is not a person who deals with countries like ours. When we speak about global security, we are at a very low level. So we are curious as to why such an influential person visited our country now. Is there any special reason for his visit? Although our leaders go on foreign state visits to go shopping and eat chocolate, a person like the Defense Minister of China would not just visit our country to do things like that. He is such an important person that he doesn't even have time to stay back an hour in a country like that he visits. There has to be some special reason for a person like that to visit Sri Lanka at a time like this. As to what this special reason is a mystery to us.
Meanwhile, a congested traffic situation was seen in the streets of Colombo during the arrival of the Chinese Minister of Defense yesterday. Meanwhile, a proposal to ban the use and importation of chemical fertilizer, pesticides and weedicides was submitted to the cabinet by the President.
The President has submitted this proposal to the Cabinet on the 26th of this month under the topic of moving towards a green and socio-economic pattern with sustainable solutions to climate change. The proposal states that Cabinet approval is sought to take immediate action to ban the use and import of chemical fertilizer, pesticides and herbicides while providing financial assistance to the producers as well as farmers for the production of organic fertilizer.
The Honourable President had informed the Cabinet that steps should be taken for the freedom of the agricultural and plantation sector from the use of pesticides and chemicals and to make limited use of chemical fertilizers and chemicals currently available in the country for the 2021 Yalla season as a step towards creating green, social and economic patterns. The President also proposed to the Cabinet that steps should be taken to cultivate the 2021-2022 Maha season completely without the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Various parties will express their displeasure regarding this because fertilizer is a large-scale business. Therefore, we might see a lot of opposition. This decision will be taken keeping that in mind.
According to the Minister of Agriculture, Mahindananda Alutgamage, 2 committees have been appointed last night to study this proposal. One committee will be chaired by Vice-Chancellor of the Vyama University, Senior Professor Udit K. Jayasinghe, and the other committee will be chaired by the Secretary to the Ministry of Agriculture, Rohana Pushpakumara. The Minister of Agriculture said that many important points such as cultivating using organic fertilizer, funding the manufacturing of organic fertilizer and the importation of organic fertilizer has been included in the proposal. He pointed out that the stocks of fertilizer needed for the Yalla season are available in the country and that organic fertilizer must be imported by this September. Adding further, the Minister said that discussions will be held tomorrow as well regarding the proposal put forward by the President. The National Movement for a Just Society, issuing a release, said that stopping the usage of chemical fertilizer must be done in a way not harming the safety of food. The release further said that this step must be taken with the understanding of all the relevant parties and on the basis of a scientific plan.
News First, the voice of the people. News from the courts this evening. A writ application was filed with the Court of Appeal to issue an order on authorities to take legal action against the illegal activity taking place by clearing the buffer zone surrounding the Singharaja Forest Reserve, which is a national heritage site.
The illegal activities cited in the writ application filed by the Centre for Environmental Justice and its Executive Director Hemantha Vittanage includes unauthorized cultivation and construction in the buffer zone surrounding the Singharaja forest. The petitioners informed the Court of Appeal that the illegal activities carried out by various parties causes harm to the biodiversity within the Singharaja Forest Reserve and the buffer zone as well as the wild animals living in the area, including wild elephants. The Minister in charge of Wildlife, the Secretary to the Ministry, the Director General of Wildlife, the Secretary to the Ministry of Environment and the Attorney General were named as respondents in the application.
Litrogas Lanka has assured that ordinary 12.5 kilogram gas cylinders will be available for consumers without any shortage.
Issuing a statement, the State Ministry of Cooperative Societies, Marketing Development and Consumer Protection assured that the ordinary 12.5 kilogram gas cylinder will be available for sale at 1,493 rupees without any shortage. The statement added that if the new 18-litre hybrid cylinder is being introduced to the market, the consumers must be able to distinguish them from the existing ordinary gas cylinders in the market. According to the State Ministry, the public must also be informed of the exact amount of gas in the new cylinder and the corresponding price. The State Ministry requests the general public to contact the Consumer Affairs Authority on 1977 if they are unable to purchase the ordinary 12.5 kilogram gas cylinder from the market.
World Bank Country Director for the Maldives, Nepal and Sri Lanka, Faris Haddad Zervos, concluded a successful visit to Sri Lanka yesterday, where he reiterated the World Bank's commitment to support Sri Lanka's efforts towards recovery and to build back better from the COVID-19 pandemic.
The visit of the World Bank management also saw the signing of two important agreements between the World Bank and the Sri Lankan government. A $69.53 million credit will help improve dams and irrigation schemes covering 165,000 hectares of agricultural land and improve the management of watersheds and water resources, benefiting 356,000 farming families. Under a second $69.33 million loan, a modern transport terminal will be built in the Kandy city that will integrate rail, bus, three-wheeler and pedestrian traffic to make it safer and more efficient. The current World Bank portfolio in Sri Lanka consists of 19 ongoing projects with a total commitment value of $2.33 billion in a variety of sectors, including transport, urban, agriculture, water, education and health. Today, the World Bank Country Director participated in a webinar organized by the Pathfinder Foundation, Sri Lanka. Former Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, also participated in it.
Yesterday, there was an agreement by the World Bank senior management to also make available $81 million for Sri Lanka to help with vaccine acquisition along with other supplies. And we're expecting our forecast for 2021 is 3.4% and for 2022 is 2.0%. How those were done, I could tell you, and I'm sure you know this, they're very complex formulas which take a huge number of assumptions. We have actually been discussing with the central bank and with others our assumptions versus theirs. We had a meeting with the central bank and the Honorable Governor of the Central Bank, and we were going through these things. So there's a lot of areas where we had different assumptions. At our assumptions, we have different assumptions than our colleagues at the IMF. And I think that happens. So I think what's really important is to look at the direction. So I think, that's one of the issues. We need to look at what the trajectory is, and we look at the vulnerabilities. What are the things that are going to impact the GDP?
One of the lessons that the East and Southeast Asians learned from the Asian financial crisis, the importance of having buffers in the economy. They built up insurance through running large external reserves. They created fiscal space. In our case, we tend to live on the edge. So when there is a crisis, it's very difficult to respond because there is a challenge in terms of fiscal space, there's a challenge in terms of external reserve, and then sometimes we are forced to settle for a much lower equilibrium than need be if we had some space. So I think going forward, when we're going to build back better, we've identified certain preferences. But for Sri Lanka specifically, one needs to add another one, which is that we should work at building buffers.
And with that, we wrap up this Wednesday's edition of Primetime News on News First, the voice of the people. I'm Tarusha Kumar Singh, along with our sign language interpreter for today, Tharaka Gabriel. Take care and don't forget to wear a mask if you're stepping outside. Good night.